Victory Studios in downtown Little Rock, this is Capitol View.
And good Sunday morning to you. Welcome into Capitol View. I'm Jay Burr. Representative Bruce Westerman, home from Washington, D.C. this week, joins us now. Man, we've got a lot to get to here. There's a lot of stuff going up there in D.C. Obviously, impeachment, the inquiry, kind of the hot topic. Will probably be a hot topic for a while. Where do we currently stand? Kind of what's the direction? I know there's a lot of back and forth going on right now.
Yeah, well, impeachment's kind of sucking all the oxygen out of the room and
Sure
out of the city in D.C. You know, the World Series was a little bit of diversion from that in the city, but
yeah.
They're full back on the impeachment now. But, you know, if you're following this, which I'm not sure how many people are still following it, but
right.
Last week, Speaker Pelosi finally brought a resolution to the floor 37 days after she started the impeachment inquiry. Basically a rubber stamp to say, you know, what we've been doing is okay, we're going to continue to do it, continue to have these closed-door meetings, continue to control the flow of information in and out of the meetings, and also to continue to have control over who testifies at the meeting. So, you know, it's all a political process. They've been trying to impeach President Trump since before he was even inaugurated. Jay, I was actually in the White House with the president.
Right.
I believe that was last Tuesday when Pelosi filed the resolution. So I got to be there with him and see his reaction when his staff came in and told him that the papers have been filed, and he went on a little bit of a tirade there.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. But the sad thing is we were in his office talking about policy and things we wanted to work on, you know, talking about what do we do on health care, what do we do with immigration, what do we do on environmental policy, and just, you know, having a great discussion on policy and things that are, I believe, what the American people want us to talk about. Talking about trade.
Yeah.
You know, he's got this phase one with China going on.
Yeah.
Which is huge for agriculture and huge for Arkansas to get that worked out. But we've had the USMCA ready to vote on for a couple of months. The only thing keeping that from being the law is Nancy Pelosi putting it on the floor for a vote. It's got bipartisan support. It would pass with flying colors in the House, and it would pass in the Senate and get signed into law. Huge for trade. Two of our largest trading partners, Canada and Mexico. The deal is there. All we have to do is approve it. The president's negotiated a new deal with Japan, which is the third largest economy in the world, and they're our fourth largest trading partner. They may be the third largest trading partner now. But as well as the economy is doing, I think Pelosi and others know that, you know, if they'll work to actually help on trade, the economy is going to be doing even better, and I think they just don't want to give the president any kind of a victory right now. And he's got, this administration's got a lot of victories. If you look at the economy right now, we've got the lowest unemployment rate pretty much on record. It's also the lowest for minorities and for women. We've got rising household income. One thing the president was talking about was how under his administration, the personal income has gone up.
Yeah.
So I went back and started doing some research on it, and sure enough, I found that, you know, like from 2000 to 2008 under George Bush, the household personal income actually went down in real dollars.
Right.
But we had 9/11 and the Great Recession in that. Under President Obama, under his whole term, it went up almost $3,000. But in the first 2 years of President Trump's term, it's gone up over, or right at $2,000 on real growth on personal income. So there's a lot of good things he can talk about, but it seems like the only thing that is really coming out of D.C. is talking impeachment. And I really think it's going to help Republicans out in the House in the next election.
Right.
31 seats that President Trump won in 2016, that Democrats won in the 2018 midterms. And they want to talk about the polling, about how, you know, they say a majority of Americans want the president impeached. Well, they need to be polling in those districts where they flipped the House last time,
right?
Because they're pretty upside down in those districts, and I think it's going to come back to bite them. I think the American public is tired of hearing about impeachment, knowing that there's an election less than a year away.
Right.
It would be overturning the will of the people, the vote of the people, and plus they know the Senate's not going to convict the president on impeachment based on this phone call with the Ukraine. So it's been a never-ending saga, and it looks like it's going to continue going right up to the election. Kind of a soap opera, you know, unfolding here every day here.
I do want to quickly touch on one thing. I know the OAA, the Older Americans Act, was reauthorized just recently here. I guess kind of what does that do, not only just for elderly in the country, but also here in Arkansas?
Yeah, well, that was an act that was put in place back in the 1960s, and it was basically put there to help protect older people who you know, can't work, can't provide for themselves, and we authorized that in the House. I believe it's still going to go through the Senate and get signed into law, but it's, you know, it's one of those kinds of pieces of legislation that I think people would rather us be working on. But I'm glad you brought it up, because not many people want to talk about policy.
Some policy right now. Yeah. Some other policy that we kind of do need to sort of focus on, and I think will become a focus here soon enough, is just a spending bill in general. I think there's about 3 weeks left on that till, you know, we have another one of these government shutdowns. Where does the Congress stand on that?
This is a real pet peeve of mine. It's been one since I've been in Congress, and for as long as I'm fortunate to serve in Congress, it'll probably be a pet peeve. But we know every year, September 30th, the fiscal budget comes to an end.
Right.
The new budget starts October 1st. We've got to get back to regular order, passing appropriation bills in the House, getting them over to the Senate taking them up and debating them, and going through regular order and getting our budget approved, not a continuing resolution, which does damage to the military. Right now we're operating under a CR through, I believe, the 21st, and you know, that's Nancy Pelosi and probably Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell debating and Kevin McCarthy debating what's going to be in that bill, and it takes the rest of the country out of the equation. Whether it'll be another CR, I've heard we may have a CR all the way up to through the fiscal year that we're currently in, which is not a good thing for. You can't do new starts in the military, so it stops any kind of new development on programs in the military. And the sad thing is, we know that budget comes around every year, but it's become too much of a leverage tool. Yeah. It's really the minority in the Senate that has the upper hand on it, because it takes 60 votes to approve an appropriation bill, and if they won't bring one up for debate in the Senate, then it comes down to a negotiation time, and those senators that are holding out are the ones that have the most negotiating power.
So there you go. That's never a dull moment up there in Washington, D.C.
Never a dull moment.
Representative Westerman, we appreciate the time.
Yeah,
you're welcome back here anytime.
Thank you.
We got more coming up here after a quick break. You're watching Capitol View Sunday morning.
Home, family, and holidays come together at FFO Home. Compare our Family Chase sectional at $1,800. Our low everyday price, just $998. No interest financing, too. Get it today at FFO Home. The lowest price every day.
Sold it, sold it, sold it.
Absolute land auction, 19 acres with 2,900 feet of US 167 frontage. An incredible view over the White River. Sell regardless of price. Tuesday, November 12th at 11 a.m. Go to WilsonAuctioneers.com.
Sold it, sold it, sold it.
Ever since I was 5 years old, it's been all about football. It's been about running, jumping, blocking, tackling. I had terrible foot issues that prevented me from really having a normal life with my kids. With the good feet, our supports, man, I'm always ready. My kids actually got to enjoy me in the yard more, racing each other, backpedaling, teaching them some things, being a dad.
Try them for yourself with a free arch support fitting and test walk at the Good Feet store.
We like our heroes to be larger than life, but in the real world, heroes don't hide behind capes or masks, and they change lives not with daring actions, but with small gestures. On our 10th anniversary, we celebrate everyone who has played the Arkansas Scholarship Lottery. You've created nearly $1 billion in scholarships to educate the next generation of Arkansans. So while you didn't set out to be heroic, you certainly achieved it, because when you play, we all win.
Having dental pain? You need to call the professionals at DDS Dentures and Implant Solutions. Right now, get implants starting at only $995. Call to make your appointment today.
Go show the world your beautiful smile.
Home, family, and holidays come together at FFO Home. Our wood sleigh bed with linen inserts is a value at only $2.98, and you can take it home today. No interest financing, too, at FFO Home. Get the lowest price every day.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
And welcome back to Capitol View. Well, he spent part of his week in D.C. traveling across Arkansas, and he joins us now. He managed to squeeze us into his busy schedule. Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin. Boss, we appreciate you coming through here. A lot to get to, obviously with it Veterans Day and all that, but let's talk about some of your travels and traverses here. Up in D.C. this past week, kind of told me it wasn't all that exciting, but come on, D.C., it's always exciting.
When I get to D.C., I am ready to get back on that nonstop back to Little Rock.
Yeah.
You know, when I was in Congress, we didn't have the nonstop. So now that we've got the nonstop, I can get up, have the meetings, and get back. But yeah, I was in Paris, Arkansas last night. Yeah. Not Paris, France. Not Paris, Texas. Not Paris, Tennessee. Paris, Arkansas. We had a good time last night. I was in Hot Springs Village this morning. I was in Maumelle, as you were saying, for opening up the exit there. Was in we had a great veterans event at St. Vincent this morning. So a lot of stuff going on around, and I always have time for y'all.
That's it.
Always have time for you.
We can always squeeze you in here, that's for sure here. You also recently went out to Singapore. I know you were kind of out there, not in official capacity, but you did get to...
Not paid for by the people of Arkansas.
That's right. Well, I'll make mention of that for sure. But you did get to talk to their education minister.
Yeah, look, it was really encouraging. I was at a table with the education minister from Singapore, and Singapore's done a lot of innovative things to grow their economy. Mm-hmm. And as I was listening to him talk about workforce training, it dawned on me, and it was an encouraging moment, really, because he was saying a lot of the same things that we say. And he was talking about what an important role there is for the private sector in workforce training. Right. And we've seen that all over the state. There's a guy named Mike Rogers who works for Tyson, who's been very instrumental in engaging with two-year colleges, community colleges, technical schools, and even high schools, and making sure that the young people, or not so young people like me maybe, who are coming out of these schools are getting an education that is marketable. Right. You want to make sure that people are being taught what the private sector needs, right? And so for the longest time, private sector, a lot of the companies, they wanted to grow. They wanted to expand here in the state. But, and this wasn't just an Arkansas problem, but they looked around and they weren't finding enough graduates, enough young people, enough new employees with the skill set they needed.
And you mentioned they were kind of cookie cutter.
Yeah, so they were being mass produced with these certain skill sets out of our schools, our educational institutions. And the private sector had a choice. They could go somewhere else, which we didn't want. They could not grow, which we don't want. Yeah. Right? Or they could just say, hey, I'm going to reach out to these institutions and I'm going to help them understand what exactly we need from the workers. And that's exactly what has happened. So the point is, this is what they were talking about in Singapore on the other side of the world. And I said, that is exactly what our experience is. And we're seeing more and more of that sort of engagement in Arkansas. Yeah. And that's really encouraging. I just opened, I was at a ribbon cutting in Clarksville, at Clarksville High School, where a number of private sector companies have come together, including Tyson and some other companies up there, have come together and helped fund a technical education center there at the high school. And so what they do is they are helping the educational institutions know what they need to be teaching. And at the same time, they're ensuring that the workers are going to get are ready to roll, right? So it was just an encouraging moment because I'm seeing this all over our state, and it's exactly what was being talked about on the other side of the world. And so if there are communities that are working on workforce training and they do not have the private sector companies at the table, got to do that. Got to do that because who knows best what kind of workers, what kind of skills they need. Well, the places are going to go work.
Yeah.
And so that's just an important part of the equation. And a lot of times we think of that in the more technical fields, STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and math. But what we've seen is, whether you're talking about STEM fields or culinary arts or hospitality, which is dealing with restaurants and hotels, whatever it is, you really got to have the private sector employers at the table helping guide the curriculum instruction.
Well, I'd assume, too, that makes them more workforce ready on top of that. It seems like a win-win.
They don't have to get retrained when they get out. They are ready to roll because, in many cases, the people they're going to work for have been at the table as they got their education.
So it's kind of an apprenticeship without being necessarily an apprenticeship.
That's right. Common sense.
All right. We're going to wrap this block up here. Lieutenant Governor, he's going to stick around with us here because obviously Veterans Day coming up tomorrow. So we're going to have a lot to talk about there when it comes to that. And obviously we're going to honor some of the Arkansans who served our great country here. We've got more with Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin here right after this. You're watching Capitol View on Sunday morning.
Magic always happens with a gift from Keepsakes. Our stunning line of Philip Gabriel, the fastest growing designer line in America, is sure to make the perfect gift. Crafted in Italy and made to share with generations to come, Philip Gabriel's now on sale. Only $299 at Keepsakes Jewelry in Whitehall.
Sold it, sold it, sold it.
Attention fish farmers, duck hunters, home buyers, and real estate investors. Real estate and equipment auction. A prime 200-acre Lono County fish farm with 2 move-in ready homes. Also selling John Deere tractor, implements, trucks, and more. Friday, November 15th at 10 a.m. Go to WilsonAuctioneers.com.
Sold it, sold it, sold it.
Ashley Home Store believes that great mornings start with the perfect mattress. That's why we carry the nation's top brands like Tempur-Pedic, Sealy, Serta, and our exclusive Ashley Sleep. And with incredible financing and delivery options, your nights of tossing and turning are over. So whether you're a soft pillow top sleeper or the contouring hybrid foam type, we have the perfect mattress for you. Come discover why Ashley Home Store is America's #1 furniture and mattress store. Ashley Home Store. This is home.
Come and enjoy a new experience in shopping for your home. At Aladdin Rugs and Home Decor, we have over 5,000 rugs in the latest colors and styles. Bring your pillows, your pillow shams, and sizes. We will help you select the perfect rug. We're #1 in customer service with 15,000 square feet of rugs, unique home decor, wallpaper, and flooring. Remember, buy today, take it home today, and save. Why wait?
At Arkansas Spine and Pain, we know that family is everything. It fuels our love, our laughter, and unfortunately, some of our pain. That's why we're here, to help you and your loved ones live pain-free. Get back to doing the things you love, fishing with the grandkids, playing a round of golf, exploring the natural state. So give us a call today and let our family at Arkansas Spine and Pain get you out of the painful cycle you're in. You deserve to get your life back ASAP.
It's our Man Cave sale at Family Leisure.
First, the seating. Theater seats and massage chairs are priced to move. Next, the entertainment. Dartboards to pool tables and everything in between. Add the finishing touch. Bars, bar stools, and more. Man Cave sale going on now at Family Leisure.
Tell your story when you wear a one-of-a-kind Ronaldo design from Keepsakes. Inspiring Ronaldo bracelets symbolize your story of love, friendship, and precious memories. Shop our premier selection of Ronaldo designs for the best quality and prices at Keepsakes Jewelry.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
And welcome back to Capitol View. On Monday, we will take time to pay our respects to those who have served in the military and fought for the freedoms we have today. Again, Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin, who's also a colonel in the U.S. Army Reserves, joins us here. Some interesting issues or important issues that I know you wanted to touch on here this morning when it comes to vets and vets issues here, but I know suicide is one of those big ones that gets talked about a lot, and kind of the numbers are, you always kind of look at them, they're a little staggering, but at least here in Arkansas, they sort of fall in line with the national average. Kind of, what are we trying to do here, at least in Arkansas, to kind of reel that in? Well,
this is particularly a problem in the years when service members return from overseas. Now, it's a problem beyond that, but there's a higher risk of suicide in I think in the 3 years following the soldiers or service members return from service overseas, in particular, particularly if they've seen combat.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm a commander of a unit at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, which is very much a combat-forward post. And look, the Army and the other services have struggled to deal with this over the years. And part of it, a big part of it, is recognizing and verbalizing the fact that it is a problem. And that mental illness is something that we've got to treat seriously. It's not something to hide. It's something we've got to openly talk about. It also, things like PTSD and the after effects of combat and war, these are all things that I think in the last decade you've seen the military speak more openly about. But I can tell you in 2019, as a commander of troops at Fort Bragg, this is still very much suicide prevention, suicide awareness, the different characteristics to look for when you're sort of looking amongst your soldiers to see maybe some of the traits that indicate there's some suffering going on. All of that sort of thing is still a big part of the conversation. And I like to mention it and make sure that people are aware. If you know somebody who has come back from service or is in service, a veteran maybe, who doesn't seem well, has been depressed, maybe even has mentioned taking their own life, because that's often the case before they do actually take their own life. You know, treat that seriously and get help. I'd be happy to talk to someone and get them connected to the right people if you call my office at the Lieutenant Governor's office. But there are lots of resources. And that is often the frustrating thing, is there are so many resources now through the VA, through the active duty military, to the Guard and Reserve, etc. And private sector nonprofits are involved as well. So there's a lot of resources, but those resources don't help if we don't get people connected. And so I just wanted to raise that. This is, you know, we've even had generals' sons. I think it was General Kelly, who was President Trump's chief of staff. I think his son committed suicide, if I remember correctly. And so this has affected people both in the military and outside the military. It's a real tragedy. And so we just need to wrap our arms around these service members and make sure they get the care that they need.
Fantastic. And obviously, too, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention some of the items that you've got here. Some old school cool stuff right here.
This sort of inspired me. I don't know if you can zoom in on that. This,
we'll get them over there.
This and some other stuff that I had inspired me to join the Army in 1996. This was my grandfather's induction into World War I. He was in the Army in France, so he was drafted through Magnolia up to what used to be Camp Pike. Now Camp Pike's small, but Camp Robinson used to be Camp Pike. All of it did. And it was a federal installation, so he went through training there, went to Fort Lee, Virginia, then went to France. And I've got a lot of stuff, but this is when he 25th May 1918, he had to meet with the local board. So this is 101 years old right here. And then the other thing, you hear a lot from people that veterans and their family don't speak much and about their experience at overseas or on active duty or whatever. And that's sometimes true. People want to move on.
Which kind of goes hand in hand, too, with what you were talking about earlier with the suicide.
Some of that, but sometimes they don't want to talk about it. This is a book that I found interesting. It's called War Letters. And it's a number of letters from service members to loved ones, etc., back home. And it's been out for a while. I got this one used I think I got it used online. But and it has letters from Civil War all the way through the 1990s. And it really gives you an inside, behind-the-scenes look at what soldiers in Vietnam, service members in Vietnam and Korea, World War II, World War I, etc., what they were thinking. and a lot of the thoughts that you won't hear from them when they get back.
Yeah.
But you can read about it here. It's a really, really interesting, insightful book, War Letters. So anyway, just wanted to put a plug in for that. And I'll say this. There's no guarantee that we'll be honoring veterans 100 years from now. I believe we will, but there's no guarantee. So how do we make sure that happens? We pass the values of respect and honor of veterans on to the next generation through our children. So take your children, take your grandchildren, if you get a chance, to a Veterans Day event. Instill in them the values that we share so that when we're long gone, they'll be carrying on those values.
Absolutely, and there's plenty around the state, and that's for sure.
Amen.
Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin, boss.
Thank you. Appreciate you very much.
Thank you. We're back to wrap it up after this. You're watching Capitol View Sunday morning.
This patty melt is loaded. Beef patty, grilled onions, melty cheese on Texas toast.
I propose a toast.
Oh, awesome.
Peter, you're dull.
Okay, this feels more like a roast.
I propose a roast.
Grab a patty melt while they last and order ahead for happy hour anytime.
Custom Landscape and Nursery is located 20 miles outside of Conway. We're an 80-acre nursery. We grow 75 to 80% of our material ourselves, so it's acclimated to our climate, which is a little bit different than the material that's brought in. I know when people come out to the nursery, they always refer to the fact they've really never seen a nursery like this. I'd like to invite y'all to come out and to check out the nursery. I promise you, it'll be a nursery like none you've ever seen before. Visit our Facebook page or our website at customlandscapeandnursery.com.
Bacon mac and cheese bites are the perfect comfort snack.
I needed some comfort, man. It's been a tough day.
What'd you do?
Well, I only got 10 hours of sleep.
Oh.
Get them while they're hot. Bacon mac and cheese or chili cheese bites are $2.99.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
That'll wrap it up for this week. Again, make sure you thank our veterans tomorrow here. We're back with an all-new Capitol View next week. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.